It is endless debate, deferral, delay on the issues that matter most to Torontonians. So less talk, more action reflects that ethos. It really is a call to action, a call to urgency to tackle, affordability, community safety, unlocking gridlock, all the things that matter to Torontonians. And sometimes I find the politicians down at City Hall, particularly the ones who have been there for a decade or more, they're consumed with the vote count, they're consumed with, their own sort of political posturing, and it comes at the expense of progress for the city.
Do you think that hits home for the people at home, or do you think it's what's not being done?
Oh, I think it's a message that resonates very clearly. I mean, if anyone's had interactions with City Hall, whether that's trying to register your kids for swimming lessons, or maybe you're trying to do a small renovation, you know how difficult that is.
Affordable housing is probably the number one issue in the city right now. It certainly has resonated throughout this campaign. You've talked about the missing middle, for instance, and being able to build more and make neighborhoods a little more dense than they already are. How do you go about doing that beyond perhaps what 2 weeks ago at council was already passed in terms of allowing that multiplex housing in place?
Well, since I became the chair of planning and housing 5 months ago, we have done more to advance the housing file in 5 months than you had seen over the past 5 years. And these changes are really important. I mean, multiplex, the idea of being able to bring small neighborhood scale apartments, duplex, triplex to neighborhoods across Toronto will make a significant difference on a go-forward basis. Again, it goes back to fixing the process. The bureaucracy is so fixated on process, and I'm going to stand up a culture change and usher in a new era of accountability to make sure we're less focused on process and more focused on outcomes. And housing as an outcome is what this city needs to be laser focused on. You can throw out however many 10,000s of units that you want to put in a plan, but if we don't actually change the process at City Hall, it's just going to be planned shuffling between desks, and we're not actually going to build any housing.
Changing the process, it's been a process for a very long time. It's been the same. How do you go about changing that as quickly as you want to do?
Well, again, it is about political leadership, and I think having worked in the civil service, sometimes there's a culture of fear, because you haven't seen the political leadership that has been unequivocal in saying, look, we have a housing crisis, and here are the steps that we're going to take to resolve that.
You mentioned your competitors and the numbers that they're throwing out there. It's getting very convoluted in terms of all the platforms and all the different target numbers that are being thrown out there in terms of housing. How can you stand out from the rest of the numbers that are being thrown out there?
Well, I'm a professional urban planner. I'm trained in this world. I've actually worked in the civil service at the City of Toronto and seen these problems up close firsthand. I ran for council to fix that. The numbers that are being thrown around, the math doesn't work on them. We could get into the details if you want to, but standing up different funds to build public housing, I mean, the answer to bureaucratic delays is not creating more bureaucratic institutions to push these things forward. I mean, fundamentally, I think Torontonians know that doesn't actually make any sense.
We're in your house. You've made a point of talking about your friend Paul, who's living downstairs right below us for $1,000 per month. Why did you want to bring that up?
It's really funny, actually. Like, I've told that story for years in, planning and housing committee, on the floor of council, and then at the debate last week, and it got picked up. I mean, that story is important because it's a story that's reflective of thousands of Torontonians' experiences. It's the idea that, they're in the workforce, they've got a good middle class job, and yet they can't afford to live here. And so I hear about that, people can dunk on me or whatever, and that's fine. They're entitled to do that. And Twitter can be a very toxic place. But the reality is that experience, I hear about that every day all over the city. And most people are like, yeah, it's hard to live here. And my paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to. And housing costs continue to escalate, or in fact, I can't even find somewhere to live.
Traffic gridlock. That's something you've talked about a number of times as well. The idea of a congestion relief commissioner is what you've brought forward. How would that make things different than they are already today?
Well, again, it goes back to how I'm going to usher in an era of accountability at City Hall. I mean, you drive on Lakeshore right now, and I'm sure many viewers have been down there. It's chaos because you've got the city doing the gardener, You've got the province doing the Ontario line, and you've got the federal government doing flood protection at the Don. You ask who's in charge? The answer is nobody. None of that is coordinated. You have 3 levels of government undertaking major infrastructure work, and nobody's in charge. You drive through downtown and you constantly have parallel street after parallel street tied up with pylons and Jersey barriers, and nobody is thinking strategically about how we move vehicles through the core.
You, in the past, have talked about being a cycling advocate. How does that help in other forms of transportation?
Well, because gridlock is bad for everybody. And as a cyclist who rides around the city, it's not good to be in construction chaos. You know, that's where our streets are less safer. It doesn't matter whether you are taking transit or you are riding a bike or you are driving a car or you are walking through the neighborhood. The construction chaos is bad for everybody. And if we can facilitate people moving through the city safer, easier, that's going to be better for all Torontonians.
You mentioned the public mandate letters of all senior staff. That more or less gives us a sense that the strong mayor powers is something that you're probably willing to use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not only am I willing to use it, I'm campaigning on it. So crystal clear with you, and I have been from day one, I will be a strong mayor of action. And without getting into the details of Bill 3 and Bill 39 and the different legislation, those are things that have been needed at City Hall. And I saw it as a civil servant working there, and I've seen it as a councillor. And it didn't take me longer than 4 years to recognize the problem. Endless debate, deferral, delay. The joke at City Hall is the best way to get reelected is to do nothing at all. And I think when you talk to Torontonians, they feel that. There are thousands of incredible, dedicated professional public servants that do amazing work. You know, they are moving heaven and earth to get things done. But like every major organization that employs 40,000 people, there are also some people who are mailing it in. There are some people who are counting the days to retirement, and that's fine. Take the package and move on. This is about delivering results for Torontonians. So yeah, I mean, I think those tools are very effective. And if you are one of those councillors, you know, that likes to stand up and make performative statements, but doesn't actually want to do the work to move housing or infrastructure or transit forward, you know, citywide mandate, crisis, breaking point in the city on affordability and housing and congestion and infrastructure. These are the things I'm running on, and these are the things I'm going to deliver. It won't be for everybody, but when I'm elected, it'll be about less talk, more action on the things that matter most.
Almost any candidate in any election will say the only poll that counts is the one on election day. We know what the polls have said to this point during the campaign. You're not necessarily up there in terms of the other candidates as well. What do you do to make things different in the eyes of voters between now and the time for them to actually cast their ballot?
Our message resonates with all the folks who are fighting tooth and nail to call this city home because they believe in Toronto. All their hopes and their aspirations, they want to realize that. I will be a strong mayor of action to help them realize their goals and their dreams here in the city. But, you know, we have, 5 weeks? 5 weeks now. And if you look at, you know, elections across this country, even here in the city, in 2003, David Miller was sitting at like 11%, 4 weeks to go. And I think Barbara Hall was sitting there at 40%. So it's certainly not unprecedented in a municipal election for there to be a lot of movement. This is a by-election. That throws more chaos into the mix. It'll matter who shows up and turns out on election day. But we have a message that resonates with real Torontonians, and we have lots of support every day, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thanks for bringing us into your home.
Come by anytime.